Well, I'm Douglas Harding, the man without a head. Well, what's all this business about having no head? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, really, it's about the question of your true identity and my true identity, about who and what we really are. Now, there's a difference, isn't there? I would say a total difference between what we are for ourselves at center, that's our reality, where we're coming from, and what we are in appearance out there for others at a distance. Now, they've got to be different. How could I be here, right here, at 0 inches from myself, what you find me to be at, 3 or 4 feet away? Got to be different. So, to put it all in a nutshell, I promise you I'm not a bit what I look like. Thank God. And I would suggest that you are in a similar position. And it seems to me that we have really not got this straight. What is the difference between what I am to myself, that is my central reality, who I really am, and my appearance? Or my appearances are many, and they depend, don't they, on how far the observer is away. They depend on the lighting and 100 other factors. Appearance, very variable, very interesting, very true. We all have appearances. Question is, whose are they? And that's what this tape is all about, who we really are. Now, in the course of our experience together, a good many questions will arise in your mind, and we've tried to anticipate your questions and get them asked in the course of our experience. These are the kind of questions that probably will occur to you, and I shall do my best to answer them.
Why go into the question of who I really am?
Well, I can tell you why I find this question so important and so fascinating. And I think my first reason for going into this whole question of my true identity is a kind of thankfulness at having happened. You see, it's as though one needn't have happened, isn't it? But having happened and being, I suppose, capable of asking such a question, who am I, or what has happened, it seems so chicken-hearted and unadventurous to live and die without ever inquiring who's doing so. I mean, can you really think of any question more interesting, more worth asking than who am I? Can you really think of anything more important? You see, after all, if I'm living from a lie, living from who I'm not in imagination, I'm surely going to snare up my life. Isn't it rather important, not only a fascinating question, but an extremely important practical question, to live not from a lie, but from the truth of who I am? Now, when you're using a tool, it's a good thing to know whether it's a saw or a hammer, etc. Otherwise, you might do yourself a horrible mischief. Well, you are, and I am, our tool for living. You're your tool for living. Now, it's a good thing to find out what the tool is. And I would say, at this point, I would really say this, that if you're like me, you've got it wrong. I mean, we've been told what is not true, because other people have told us what we are really, and we've listened to them, not realizing that on the question of who we are, right at the point we exist at the center on this question, and nobody can tell us what the answer is but ourselves. You are the sole and final authority on what it's like being you now, right where you are. Nobody else is in a position to say. Now, if you get that answer right, if you really get it right, convincing to you and true, I think there's a presumption your life is going to be more together, more sensible, more meaningful, more interesting, more fascinating, more important. In a way, without it, doesn't it lack dignity? Your life is meaningless and lacking in the dignity it could have, surely, if it's not conscious. So this question, so far we've seen that this question of who I am is A, surely fascinating, and B, surely practical, important. Now, there are two reasons, but I can think of another one which is pretty important too. Now, during the course of the last 2,000 or 3,000 years, the wise ones of humanity, certain of the very, very wise ones who are now regarded as the great ones of our species, well, they put out a rumor, a very strange rumor, that right where you are is incredible splendor and treasure. In fact, what they're apt to say about your real nature is almost embarrassingly complimentary, splendid, wonderful, beyond belief, marvelous. They have said, these great ones belonging to all sorts of religions and sometimes none, what they have said, that who you really are is a wondrous and marvelous thing. And that, well, I can tell you what some of them have said anyway. They have said that you, really you, where you are not a product of the whole darn world. You are the source of the whole thing. The source, where it's all coming from. That right where you are is the beginning of all things and the ending of all things, the meaning of all things, and you are not in the world as a product of it. It is in you, and you are where it all comes from and goes back to. Now, it's worth an hour, isn't it, of our valuable time to go into this question. Now, if you had a letter from your bank manager or a phone call from your bank manager saying some well-wisher, some uncle you've never heard of left you £1 million, I think you would check up as to whether you know he got it right or whether there was some mistake. Or you might even write a check and see if it bounced. Fat check. But here these people, they're very great ones, they have said, beyond measure you are richer and more splendid than all the millionaires in the world put together. So again, it's worth surely an hour, 3/4 of an hour of our time to go into this question. Who we really are. Does our appearance out there, very human appearance, very ordinary appearance, does it conceal a hidden splendor, a magnificence, a wonder right where one is? And that's what we're going into at this time. Well, other reasons, you may have other reasons, just sheer curiosity. I think those really would be enough to go on with. And surely, above all, I would say this is a practical question to ask. It's going to make a difference in my life if I'm living from an experience of who is living that life, or a true experience, or from illusion. And I would say this, that my experience so far of going into this question is that everything I had been brought up to believe about who I really am was upside down and wrong. Everything, about everything. It's as though to become a member of the human club one has to espouse a whole range of fictions and live by fiction, not by reality. Now that wouldn't perhaps matter so much if this weren't pretty lethal, a pretty desperate thing to live from a lie instead of from the truth of who I am. So I guess those are some of my reasons, and I leave you to find your own, but I guess those may be some of your reasons too for going to this question now with me in all seriousness.
How can I actually experience seeing who I really am?
Well, let's go into this together now. Very, very simply and very directly. Very easy. Absolutely obvious what we shall share together now. It's obvious if we look. Stop believing things and just have a look, as if for the first time. Now, let's just look at a very simple question first of all. How many eyes are you looking out of in your own experience now? I mean, you can see my two little things here, two little windows here. Two. Now, in your own experience there, are you looking out of two little holes, two tiny holes in a kind of meatball? Or is it rather like a great big eye or great big window you're looking out of, undivided? Huge open space, actually without any edges at all. Now, isn't it incredible that we spend our lives thinking we are actually looking at the world out of two little peepholes at the world? That. Whereas in fact when we look, surely, when we have the simplicity and the courage just to look at where we are, aren't we experiencing this living from this great openness here, the single eye, if you wish? You know that in the East they talk about having a third eye. Well, I don't know whether this is a third eye, but if it is, my problem is not looking out of my third eye. I never looked out of anything else, did I? Nor did you, I'm sure. That's what we look out of, isn't it? This great big window. So it's not a question of looking at what we're looking at only, but looking also simultaneously at what we're looking out of. You see, it's the second part we didn't get right, or we didn't bother with. What we're looking at is important. What we're looking out of is, I suggest, more important. And now you see, don't you, right where you are, there is this wonderful, great big open window. Now, for a start, you can see how different that is from everything we had been brought up to believe. And so simple, it's absolutely obvious. Now, you can go on from there. What you're looking at is a face, Douglas's face here. Now, what again are you looking out of? Are we face to face at this time? Are you and I confronting one another face to face, symmetrically? Or is it face here and no face where you are? So that your absence of face is filled with the presence of my face. You have my face now. Is there any other for you at this moment? Now, you know, we all believe language, don't we? We don't bother to look. I mean, whoever questions this business of being face to face that we talk about, or confrontation and so on, whoever questions it. Now, the question I'm putting to you is, have you ever, ever, ever in your life been face to face with anyone or confronted anyone? You know, like this. No wonder we have head-on collisions all the time, you know. Well, I'm suggesting that they're the trouble. This is not a head-on collision when we do that. It's a head-off non-collision. Trading faces. You know, that's what we really do, isn't it? Non-confrontation. So now you've got it. There are all sorts of ways of looking at this. Anyone will do just to get the point. And the point, a simple, perfectly obvious point I want to share with you now, which is the basis of what it's all about, is looking to see what it's like right where you are and seeing that you are not a thing. Not a thing. Your essence there is capacity. Emptiness, openness, space, void, room, fulfilling. Filling at the moment with Douglas's face plus some things around. Now, if you are just what you look like, you're that, aren't you? You're stuck with that. You are a thing, and that thing you are for life. A kind of life sentence to be that thing. I mean, very nice being a thing, perhaps, but rather limiting. And it means you're only that thing. It means you're going to die presently. And, well, you know, I'm going to die presently. You a little later on, I imagine. As that thing, because things happen and unhappen. They're born and they die and they perish. Now, the question is, what is it like right where you are? Is it not no thing? And just because it is no thing, this wonderful capacity and openness, isn't it true that you are taking on whatever is on offer? The universe as it's presented to you at this time. Nor, I suggest, can you see a difference, any distinction, any separation between the space right where you are and what fills it. I mean, here's what fills it. And there is your space, which is being filled by Douglas. Any separation? No. So it really is true, isn't it, that at this time you've lost one thing that you never had there, really, namely your appearance, which is a problem of other people, or the privilege of other people. You've lost that. I would say good riddance, really. I mean, it's their business. Your face is our business, and you bequeath it to us, and we look after it, and we're very grateful, or should be. And your business is to look at your true face, which is no face, which is the world, isn't it? So I would say this is a very good bargain, you know, trading one tiny thing in the universe for the whole darn lot. I mean, it's so profitable, isn't it? It's so incredibly profitable to change, to exchange this one mortal, pretty non-okay thing for the whole world. Now, the thing, namely your appearance, is real, but it's real as appearance. It's not real as real. It's not really what you are. It is one of your myriad appearances at a certain range. I mean, nearer to you look quite different, further away you look quite different. It is one of your many appearances. Now, what you really are is, I would say, no thing and all things, if you really look and see. And there are many other ways of sharing this, and we shall be sharing a few as we go along. But meantime, you can just see, can't you, that where you are, and not a pair of little peepholes, but this great big window, and the great big window is space, which is filled with scene, and that whereas you, where you are colourless, of course, and filled with Douglas's colour this time. And you're shapeless right where you are, then your shape can become Douglas's shape, or whatever you like to turn to at this time, or later. You're shaped by the world, by whatever is in view, because you have no shape of your very, very own, centrally. But you are free then to take on every colour, every shape, every form that's available. I mean, it's such incredible liberation, isn't it, from being kind of entombed in a thing. and a thing which is on its way out. A mortal thing, a temporary thing, a thing which surely bugging us, and above all, it's not true. It's not true. And as I said before, surely the thing is to live from who we are. It's going to be more enjoyable, more practical, it's going to work better. And how simple to see. How simple to see this. So it all boils down to this simple thing. What am I, in my own experience at this time? What am I looking out of? Because that's real, that's my reality, as distinct from what I'm looking out of. And, as distinct from what I'm looking at, and as distinct from my appearance for you. You've got it, can't possibly not have it. So that is the basic experience. And we'll go on and perhaps enlarge on it later on.
Exactly what difference will this make in my life?
Well, let's look first of all at the business of personal relationships. A question very, very near our hearts, surely. What effect would this experience have on our personal relationships? I would say it has a profound effect on them. Because you see, personal relationships are, as commonly conceived and practiced, based on this idea of confrontation, of face-to-face, meeting, of face-to-face encounter. In fact, the word relationship implies it's a kind of symmetrical thing. Now, of course, it is a symmetrical business for a third person who's looking at the whole business from outside. But for you relating to me at this time, you can see, of course, it's utterly asymmetrical. And it is not a face-to-face situation. And for me, why? I've never been faced, I promise you, I've never been face-to-face with anyone in my whole life. Now, you can really interpret this as a kind of love. I don't mean sentimental, gooey kind of love. I mean the really factual basis of love. What I'm suggesting is, if we really look at what it's like where we are, surely we can see we are built for loving. We're built open. We're built as capacity for the other one, the loved one, or the one who is perhaps not consciously loved so much. We disappear in his or her favor, not because we're very nice or loving people, really, because that is the way we are. To vanish in favor of that one there. Now, if I'm relating to my boss or my employee or my wife or my child, it's going to make an enormous difference if I experience myself as space for them to happen in. It means that I am going to let them be what they are. Because space has no way of manipulating and using and exploiting them. Space is very patient, very hospitable, and in a certain sense is the very basis of loving. And if one experiences oneself as space for the other, one listens, one looks, one attends to the other, and the other one feels attended to, feels entertained and valued. Because, I mean, after all, if you have nothing where you are, no face, no thing at all, you know, that other one is doing a marvelous, marvelous service of supplying you with this fascinating scene, this fascinating personality there, this human, warm personality filling your space. So it's a totally different thing from the imagined basis of our personal relationships, which is a symmetrical one, like that. No wonder we have head-on collisions, no wonder confrontation is the rule. It's a fictional one. I suggest confrontation is a fiction. No one ever confronted anyone else. Only to a third person can you see the symmetry, or can the symmetry be seen. If you identify with that third person, sure, you can make yourself opposite and equal to that one there. But if we tell it like it is, and are truthful about what we are for ourselves, we see that we are built open, built for loving. And I do recommend this most highly as immensely practical, imperative, I would say, for good personal relationships. And I think people that really genuinely love one another, deeply love one another, I think they're doing this kind of naturally, but I think it's much, much more important for us at this time to do it consciously and to go out in the world and deal with people in all these circumstances of life from our space and not from our face. So I would say that is the first thing of enormous importance to me, the adjustment of personal relationships. So that in a sense I become that one without any barrier whatever. I experience my openness to them because I am just built that way. That for a start. You know, there are all sorts of advantages of being no thing but space, really. Because things are at risk, aren't they? Things are up against one another. You know, they really are threats to one another. Each is kind of asserting itself, crowding others out of its space. A thing has to really make sure it is separate thing which doesn't let the others in. It's never invaded. Things exclude one another. And that may have certain attractions, but it certainly makes you, if you are a thing, it makes you terribly at risk, and I would say basically frightened, because things perish. You should be frightened because things perish. Now, if you are no thing, it raises the question of whether you can perish at all. If you are space stroke awareness, is that the kind of thing that perishes, that comes and goes? So you see, this question, if again we come to this great question, who and what am I in my own experience? Am I a thing consumed with fear and anxiety and about to, soon to perish and be forgotten? Or am I the no thing, which includes things with different lifespans, from galaxies to particles and people? Things come and go in my space, which is not the kind of thing that comes and goes. And therefore I am not frightened, I'm not scared out of my wits if I really live from who I am and what I am, which is my no-thingness, which is absolutely safe. Incomparable safety is at your center, I suggest. Incomparable safety. Because no thing is absolutely safe. The aware no thing that you are is not the kind of thing that can be destroyed. It's the second difference it could make in my life. It could do a great, great deal to eliminate fear. Above all, I suppose our basic fear, which is the fear of death. And think of all the energy we spend keeping up this fiction of a solid thing here. No animal and no infant has this handicap. Maintaining this lie of a central thing here is so wearing. And not only do we have to keep this block, this lump in position, using up all that energy, but we have to keep on constantly adjusting it to deal with different people and different circumstances. Whereas, if I can leave them, those people out there, to take care of my thinghood, my appearance, of that lump, if you wish, why then I'm relieved of all the expenditure of energy that will involve. And that's very practical, makes lots of sense, and I promise you is really energizing.
What are the implications of this for the urgent questions facing humanity?
Well, take the most urgent question of all, really, the question of nuclear threat, perhaps the species extinguishing itself. All due to the invention of confrontation, really. It's where it all started, perhaps 1 million years ago. Our species had this incredible stroke of genius, which, unlike in the case of other species, the species came to look at itself, or the individuals came to look at themselves as if through others' eyes from outside as objects. And this invention of confrontation, you know, this thing, symmetry, worked very well in the beginning, especially for the fortunate ones. And it produced, I think, almost everything that we value in human civilization and culture. But now, it seems, because it is a lie, and it was never true, really, it seems to have outlived its usefulness, as lies do, and now threatens to extinguish the race. It's become totally counterproductive. And it seems to me that we shall only keep going if we experience a similar radical stroke of genius, a second one, which goes back, really, in a certain sense, but now consciously, to the asymmetry that infants and animals enjoy. And at every level, whether individuals or power blocks or nations or institutions or churches or whatever, this business is really proving totally disastrous. So it seems that a very radical shift of consciousness is needed from this to this. That shift is really needed if we are to survive as a species. And I don't know that it's going to come off, but I think there is a chance. There's a chance. An incredible story the human story is, and it's survived in spite of everything. It may be capable of this, but it certainly requires, at least, if not the whole bulk of humanity, which is rather a difficult one to envisage, it requires, shall we say, the conscious leaders of our society to see, particularly over the conference table in Geneva or whatever, that these are not relationships between individuals confronting one another like this, but each is really built open, built for the other. And this means a profound change in consciousness. And this is not acting from a position of weakness. You see, to be space for the other is a position of enormous strength. The incomparable safety is what I called it. Now, there are other questions, such as race and colour. Now, supposing a black man is in a room full of white people. Well, who has the black face? To whom is the black face given in that room? Not to the alleged black man. All the white people looking at him take on his colour, don't they? You see, your colour, like your face, is something that other people take care of. Because we all know that inside, really, we aren't what we look like. But this is such a simple, incredibly simple solution to this whole silly question of our colour and race. There's another thing which, if it really took off here, could make an enormous difference. Enormous difference. A black man is not a black man intrinsically, and a white man is not a white man intrinsically. Your colour is what you give to other people with your form and features and so forth. And what about greed? What about pollution? All the terrible things that happen because we exploit one another due to greed, waste, greed, and all that sort of stuff. Polluting the environment, exploiting people, exploiting poorer nations, and so forth. Well, you know, I think the reason why we are greedy, both as a people and as individuals, the basic reason why we're so greedy is that, you see, when we were very little, the whole world was ours. An infant is space for the world to happen in. I have one child said to me, Douglas, I have space for everything to happen in. Now that's what we were like. The world was ours, really, because you were full of the world and had nothing to separate your space from the stars and everything in the world. Now we got, by coming to look at ourselves from outside, we lost this treasure, we lost this wealth, and we spend the rest of our lives, alas, many of us, trying to get back a part of our lost heritage. And I really do believe, my own experience I think supports it, that when we see who we really are, we don't crave unnecessary objects which are put there simply, I think, for us to get some symbol or token of our lost treasure. When the world is yours, why go for $1 million? And chicken feed, it's ridiculous, pathetic. And one could go on and on. The social implications of this cannot be exaggerated. And it means a radical change of consciousness, but we did it once before, and we can do it again. And it doesn't mean we have to lose all the advantages of that interim period when we had this confrontation myth going. Now we revert to the truth and cash in, if you like, on all the advantages of that interlude and why we survive, hopefully.
This could sound mystical and religious. Is it also scientifically verifiable?
I think that it fits perfectly into the science scheme and the spirit of science. It seems to me to complete the scientific picture we have of ourselves and the world, fitting perfectly. And more allied, I would have thought, really, to science than to religion, although it is certainly allied to both. Well, what is science? Particularly pure science at this time. Let's look at that, rather than applied science. Science is the study of appearances, of phenomena. It is the study, region by region, of objects. Now, if you look at objects from a certain range, you get, say, a living object. Say, looking at me from a certain range, you get a human being called Douglas Harding. And science will discuss that area and go into the question of perhaps at that range sociological and other questions. Now, a biologist or cytologist coming nearer will come to a region where this is appears as tissues and cells and so on, and then he brings up his microscope to investigate that. And then the chemist or the biochemist will come nearer with his more powerful microscopes, electron microscopes and so on, and he will discover what is here to be, at his level, not denying the others, but discover this to be a chemical phenomenon, or series of processes, phenomena. And so the physicist will come in and find here particles, wavicles, particles, twists in the space-time continuum, etc., etc. No. Something very, very spacey. Now, what's left behind in this approach to what I am here from a scientist's point of view. First of all, we've got life there. Living whole person. The polycellular life. Then you have the unicellular life, the life of the cell here, as he zooms in on his subject, and the biologist takes over. And then even that life is left behind. It has become to molecules. Molecules aren't alive as such. And a chemist discovers all sorts of chemical processes at this level. And then, coming in further, we come to the level of physical processes, space-time and all that stuff. So it's being left behind all the time. Life and even materiality, certainly colour. Everything is being left behind stage by stage on the way up to me here. Now, what the scientist can never do is find out, he doesn't pretend to, find out what is the reality or noumenon behind the phenomena. He studies appearances, he studies phenomena, and that's his job. If he knows his job, he'll admit it. Of course he does, on the whole, if he's a good, pure scientist. Now, he can never get quite here. I mean, he gets to quarks and all sorts of things, because he's looking from outside. Now, what I do is to say, great, because, you know, your whole story from there up to here is a story of onion peeling and, you know, simplification, dropping characteristics, and coming, in a way, towards nothingness, no thingness. Now, I complete the story, and I say, yes, scientist, you're absolutely on the right track, but only I, who am at naught angstroms from myself, only I can really complete your story. And I do so with great pleasure, and I tell you that the center of this nest of appearances, the core of the onion, which I alone am seized of because I am it, it is no thing, and it's space for the world to happen in. And of course, well, when he moves away, instead of coming in, you get the similar story. And from further and greater distances, I would read, or this X here, because I begs the question rather, this reads, why, as something geographical and like a country and planet, solar system, galaxy. And in the last resort, you know, empty space, just dotted with with little points of light. Now, the story of my appearances ranges from the limit out there, practically empty space, and the limit here, practically empty space, with all these things in between, humanity, life, the lot, all this extraordinary array of cosmic treasures. Well, now, I complete the story, and I say, right at the center is this no thing, but it is aware. That's a great point. It's aware, no thing. So I would say this fits perfectly into the scientific picture of the world and of us as individuals, and is far more, at this point, related to science than religion. And it's implicit, seems to be, in the whole process of science, which, as I say, is the study not of central, inscrutable realities, but of appearances. So the answer to the question is, yes, it fits perfectly. It's not exactly the same science, but it's, if you like, the science of the first person, the science of that can only be put together here by the one at the center of the whole thing, which completes the science of appearances of the second or third person.
Isn't this all very visual? How would you explain it to a blind man?
Well, the answer is to, so to say, go blind and see, if I may put it rather weirdly. In other words, let's shut our eyes and see what we can find. Let's deprive ourselves of the benefit of vision and see whether we can get the same story. So it's imperative that now you and I close our eyes and look to see what we find, right where we are. So your eyes closed, my eyes closed. Please look for your boundaries, seek your boundaries now. Can you count how many toes you've got on present evidence? Have you any shape now on present evidence? Isn't your experience now of boundless space really full of certainly various sensations and thoughts and feelings and so on, but to be in a body now, what does it mean? Aren't you as spacious now as you were when your eyes were open? You know, I have blind friends who say, Douglas, this is one thing I can see is who I am now. And of course we can see it now. We can see that we are space. And what's happening in our space is perhaps less, certainly would be less decorative than what happens when our eyes are open. So having checked that one, now let's open our eyes and flood again, and flood the space with some more interesting decor. But the space is the same, isn't it?
Still, I can touch my face.
Yes, well, can you? You see, we've been losing our faces, hopefully. Well, let's make a sincere attempt to get them on again. Let's plant those things on our shoulders again if we can, by means of touch. And let's try and do it perfectly sincerely, you and I, really attempting to put this darn thing back in place. Take it from the mirror out there where it really belongs, and we'll put it here where presumably it belongs too, or people think it does. Now, can we do it? I mean, can you really sincerely, along with me, try and build this thing up here? Surely when you've got to here, the top part has disappeared. Also, what is a face? A face is something hairy and coloured and opaque. Can you build anything hairy and coloured and opaque and so on, and all together at once, right here? No, surely not. What you've got is a whole host of interesting sensations, additional to all the ones you have normally in this space. Because the space is full, all right, but it's not full of the thing you see in the mirror, is it? It's got sensations here which you can associate with a face, but they are not a face. So touch here, I think, doesn't disprove anything that we've been on about, rather it confirms it.
I see this now with you, but how do I keep it going?
Oh, that's so important. You see, up to now we've been doing the easier part. Seeing this is so simple, isn't it? So absolutely embarrassingly obvious almost. But it really is hard to keep going. And if we don't keep it up, if we don't do it, if nearly all our lives had lived from the lie of thinkhood here, why, we could hardly expect much payoff from it. We've got to live it for it to be effective, obviously. Now, the question is, how do we do that? Well, I think the big thing is that if we're really interested, we'll do it anyway. We'll find our own ways of doing it. I've found some of mine, which I'd be very pleased to share with you at this time. You may have others. I hope you will. We all develop our own little reminders. I mean, one rather desperate measure, because you can't go along the street doing it, is point. I mean, you get some funny looks if you walk along the street like this, pointing. But I know of no such effective way as pointing. Pointing here and seeing is pointing at nothing. Try it, please. Point at your face and see is pointing at nothing. That is always available. I think checking that you're looking out of two eyes or one eye, checking which it is a very, very good, simple one. Doesn't draw attention to yourself. But one which I find very entertaining and important, really, is to see that as space you never move. And one of the fictions we're living from is that we move around in the world. Now next time you're in your car, going along the road at 60 miles an hour or whatever, just look and see, and you are not moving along. The countryside is moving through you. You're not moving through the countryside. The countryside is moving through you at different paces, the hills very slowly and the telegraph poles very quickly, and the road is snaking up to you, all losing itself in your stillness. And truly, truly speaking, because you are space, and space in itself is not mobile, truth is you never moved an inch in your whole darn life. And I think it makes for safe driving, I think it makes for attentive driving, first-person driving, is to see that the countryside is going through you, and you are not going through the countryside. And of course this is well known. In a station, railway station, when you're sitting there in a still train, and you think you're moving off, the train's now started to move, you find, perhaps it's the other train that moved. I mean, that's well known. You're taken in by that. And when you're walking down a corridor, if you're really attentive, you will see the corridors walking down you. I think it's a rather fun thing. These things are so entertaining. I really would recommend this as a way of enjoying life, because it's full of discoveries, full of discoveries. Don't treat it like an exercise for keeping up the experience so much as adventure, because it really is that. And one I find very helpful is when I'm washing up, washing the dishes. Well, I watch these hands like a pair of separate animals here behaving and doing their thing here, and no control tower here controlling them. They're moving in the space, and I find they break fewer dishes when I'm attentive to this. And I would say in general, whatever I'm doing from the delusion and nonsense that there is a thing here doing it is worse done. And whatever I'm doing from my space, why, that is better done. So it's a case of two-way looking. Whatever I'm doing in that direction, or attending to in that direction, whatever these hands are doing, or these feet are going, this voice is saying, not lose sight of where I'm coming from. So it's looking in at the space and out at what is currently filling it. So I would say this is a real meditation for ordinary life, for the marketplace. Two-way looking, not losing sight of the looker. And it's not as hard as it would appear to be, but it does require doing. And we will do it if we're interested, and if we have great need. You see, I mean, to be, think I'm all right, well, I'm managing very well, we get by. But life is a way of getting tougher and tougher and tougher. Why not start this, before we're driven to it, when perhaps it's a little bit late? Why leave it a little bit late? Meantime, also have fun. But, of course, we cannot expect a much result from just one-off seeing of this, as we're doing now. It's so simple to see and very hard to keep up. But if we're interested, we shall do it. And I tell you what does help, finally, what does help enormously is to be with friends who are doing it, because it's kind of like measles, rather catching. And if the person I'm opposite to is faceless, and I'm faceless too, we're not confronting one another. We're taking our faces off one another with great joy and delight. And it's terribly easy to see this with someone who's doing it. Therefore, show someone, because you can show someone, as we've done, we've been doing here, you can show someone this in a half-a-minute flat if they really want to know urgently. And once you've seen this, you're a kind of expert. You can show anybody. So if you don't have a friend who's already seeing this simple thing, get one by showing them. Don't push it at people who aren't interested, but be available to share it with people. Well, that's a selection from the many ways of keeping this alive. But it is important to keep it up.
Could we have one more look at the essential experience?
Yes, indeed, we can. And this will be the final test, if you wish. But it's between you and me as individuals, just the pair of us. And it doesn't mean that if you're watching this tape as a group, you have to switch off at this time. It only means that the experience will lose some impact, and it will deserve repetition as individuals later. And it's the experience of the tube. And I have the tube here on my lap, and I'm going to demonstrate how we use it. And what you do is to put your face in one end of it, like this, right up to the bag, so the tube itself, in this way. And you go along to the television screen, take the tube up to the television screen, and fit the other end round my face on the screen, where I am going to ask you some questions in the tube. So will you go up to the screen, please, now, and be comfortable in front of it, and I'll start firing questions. Okay, are you ready? Well, my first question is, how many faces are there in the bag, or in the tube, we might call it, how many faces in the tube at this time on present evidence? How many faces? Look at the difference between the far end of the tube and the near end. Have you ever, inside this tube or outside, been face to face with anyone in your life? Now, look at the color here. Look at the color here. My beard and cheeks and eyes and so forth. Isn't it only on show to you because you are colorless at your end? My color on display in your absence of color? Look at the movement of my lips and eyebrows and so on. Isn't it happening in your absolute stillness now? Look at the opacity here. Isn't it totally in contrast to your perfect transparency that goes on and on and on forever in your direction? It's as though this end of the tube is a cul-de-sac, one-way street, well, not a one-way street, a blind alley, a cul-de-sac. Everything stops here and comes to an end, whereas yours goes on and on forever into depth upon depth of transparency. Well, isn't it absolutely inescapable what you are at this time in this tube? Now, why is this tube really so stunning? I feel it's stunning. Every time I go in it, been in many times over the last 20 years, I find it terrific. Why is it exciting? Why is it a knockout? Well, I give you my own thought as to why it is so. You see, our mums and dads told us that in the outside world, we were face-to-face with people, and our teachers did, everyone did. Language says we're face-to-face with people. But you see, what they never did was to tell us what we should experience inside a cardboard tube. And, of course, then we're in terrible, terrible danger of seeing what's actually the case. Well, you can experience this at any time. I suggest you make up a tube or a bag like this, shopping bag with two ends cut off, and occasionally share this with your friends. So it seems to me to be just a clear demonstration, which can't ever be doubted, of who you really are. And another way, just to finish the whole business now, can't you say to me in the bag now, here, Douglas, I have your appearance, or there, I have your appearance. Here, I am your reality. Because, after all, your reality of this clarity in the space is my reality. And this is where we come together. All the alienation and the separation that we suffer from, which is really what bugs us in our lives, is because we're separate. Now, we're built now, giving room for each other, totally unseparate. And we come together, finally, as this one reality. So you see that at your end of the bag, You are our common reality, the reality behind all beings. You can say to me if you wish, Douglas, here I am your reality. And this way I have your appearance. Now, can you imagine anything more precious and intimate and lovely than that? Well, goodbye and thank you for sharing it.